Welcome to the cold exposure and breathwork lightning round from me, Scott Carney, who's written 2 books about Wim Hof and the Wim Hof Method, as well as what you can do after you've been doing the Wim's work for 10 years. Okay, so these questions are mostly taken off of the Are Becoming the Iceman subreddit, which is the Wim Hof Method subreddit, and they're the most popular questions from the last month. First up, can cold showers help you with anxiety? Well, yeah, absolutely. They can help you with anxiety, but they don't necessarily always 100% of the time work, because when you're in ice water, like an ice bath or taking a cold shower, the sensation coming into your body is the sensation of death, and death can give you anxiety. So the magic happens when you're in that environment and you can will yourself to relax, to say, look, I am in this sensation of death that my nervous system recognizes at the end of my existence, and I'm okay with it. That's just the sensation on my skin. And then maybe you can think, hey, this sensation actually feels good, and now you're on the upward trajectory. Some people, however, if they can't sit in an ice bath or sit in a shower for like a minute and like start to relax, it can actually make them feel worse, because you start to lock in those sensations of, oh my God, this is terrible. And then you run out of the shower and things get bad. It makes your nervous system go haywire. So yes, cold showers can absolutely help you with anxiety, but it's how your relationship with that sensation changes over time. Second question, what should you do between breathing rounds? Okay, so when you're doing the Wim Hof method, it is a cyclical contrast breath work where you go from hyperventilating to exhaling, and that's one round, and then you repeat. But between those 2 rounds, you have the option to do a couple things. You can do a recovery breath, just sort of to get your mind back together, or you can do what I do, which is a variation of the DMT breathing, where I take a big full lung inhale, and then I squeeze from my toes to my butt, to my chest, to my arms, and I squeeze up to the top of my head. I turn red, and I have a little bit of a euphoric experience. That's what I do between rounds, or you can just go right back in to hyperventilating. It's sort of a choose your own adventure sort of affair. How do you avoid hypothermia? All right, so hypothermia is what happens when your core temperature goes down to below 95. That's pretty mild, but it can go all the way down to 80. If you hit 80, your body physiologically cannot heat itself back up, and you need sort of medical intervention at that point. When you get into the ice water, your first reaction is vasoconstriction. So you have all these arteries in your extremities, and in order to protect your core temperature, it all squeezes shut and shunts the blood into your core. That's in order to preserve, your vital organs from failure. When you get out of that ice water, remember your extremities now are super cold because all the blood is in here. When you get out and those dilate, so that the arteries open up, the warm blood in your core circulates through the now extremely cold extremities and actually creates something called afterdrop, where in your core temperature suddenly drops precipitously. After you've left an ice bath, typically you feel euphoric for a minute or 2, and if you've been in there a little too long, you get afterdrop, and that feels miserable. And if the afterdrop is really bad, you can get into hypothermia that can be quite dangerous. So how do you avoid hypothermia? Well, you have to sort of practice cold exposure for a long time to predict how your body's going to respond in the long run. I can do up to 30 minutes in 32 degrees water. I've done that many times. However, I've always had a hot tub near me when I've done that, because I had to plan how to warm myself up, because I would get into hypothermia if I did nothing, I think. Actually, I don't know. I didn't actually not have the hot tub with me, so I can't prove it for sure. But when I climbed up Mount Kilimanjaro with Wim Hof in 2015, I had a warm, puffy jacket with me, because the Wim Hof method is not a survival technique. It is simply a way to talk with your nervous system. So, how to avoid hypothermia? Plan for it and start small and know where your body's limits really are. Next question. What is the best home ice bath? Okay, so there's 3 options for ice baths that I like to recommend. And I did a video on this that you should check out because I went in depth onto the ice bath options that are in the world. But essentially, I have personally, as a professional bather, like a race car of an ice bath. It's called the Morosco Forge. It filters the water. It keeps it at 32 degrees all the time. It is just awesome. There's a little heating pad right at the butt, so it keeps the metal just warm enough so that you don't stick to it. I mean, it's a whole thing, but it's $14,000. If you want the race car, get the Morosco Forge. Otherwise, there's 2 other options. Get like a cow trough and fill it with ice on ice bathing days. It works really well in the winter because the ice may not freeze all the way, and you can sort of keep it for a long time. Otherwise, it's sort of a pain to always go buy ice. The other option is to get a chest freezer and fill it with water. Go to Costco, it's like $200, chest freezer, fill it with water, and that actually will keep it liquid but cold all the time. But there's that slight chance that you electrocute yourself if something goes wrong. So you have to unplug it before you get in. There's also DIY options where people have like made filtration systems and souped them up in various ways. And I will try to link to the DIY options down below. Remember, the DIY is potentially a little bit dangerous, so be careful and don't electrocute yourself. I don't know anyone who's been electrocuted. I just feel like that's a possibility. Next is, I feel really sleepy after my ice bath. Is this normal? Okay, well, normally when you get in the ice bath and you get out, you're full of adrenaline, you're psyched, you're jazzed, and you had this huge rush, and then followed by a crash a little bit later. I feel this very frequently when I get out of the ice bath. The thing here is that when you get into ice water, your metabolism ramps up and you start using a bunch of energy to heat your body. It's totally normal after using a lot of energy for your body to want to replenish its stores. So yeah, totally normal to feel tired like an hour or so after the ice bath. For me, what I love doing is napping, because napping is amazing, and like a 15-minute nap and you are ready to go once again. So yeah, pretty normal to feel tired after an ice bath. Next question. What is the difference between inhale holds and exhale holds during retentions? Okay, so an inhale hold, full lungs like that, after hyperventilating, you are going to be able to hold your breath a lot longer than normal. This is because of a normal physiological response. Is when you're hyperventilating, you're actually blowing off CO2. And CO2 is the gas that your body detects to give you the urge to gasp. I mean, there's a whole evolutionarily crazy thing that's going on here, and I'm not going to go into all of the details, but essentially, high CO2 levels mean you're going to want to breathe, and the body does not detect oxygen. That's super critical. Sometimes we think that hyperventilating increases your O2 levels, and it can bring it up to like 100%. That's true. But really, the magic is you're lowering your CO2 levels. Now, when you inhale after hyperventilating, what occurs is that you have so little CO2 in your blood and your lungs, and the volume of your lungs is so large that you can run out of oxygen before the CO2 levels get anywhere near detecting that you're about to pass out. Which is why if you hyperventilate in water and followed by a full lung inhale, which some people do because they think that they're free divers and this is going to make them dive underwater for a long time. And Wim has a whole thing about this that is really problematic. If you do that, you can pass out. And if you're in your bed, it's no big deal. You'll just come back to consciousness. But if you do it in water, you will die. Dead. Because when you pass out, your body reverts to its lizard brain. You start to breathe again, and on land, it's fine. You're just breathing air. But if you pass out in water, you are unconscious and you drown. And the same thing sort of happens with push-ups. So sometimes people do full lung inhales on push-ups, and I have done this too. And then you start doing push-ups, and they feel so easy because of this whole gas exchange thing. And then, between like 50 and 80 push-ups, there's a pretty good chance that your CO2 levels are still so low, but you've run out of oxygen that you pass out and bang your head on the floor. I've done that twice. It's not super cool. Not like, I might chip a tooth, maybe bloody my nose, but it's not as bad as water. So that's what's the inhale breath hold. The exhale breath hold is considered safer because there's less gas here, so the CO2 builds up and you can actually detect it a little bit better. You can still sort of mess up, but it's a little bit better and a little bit safer than the full lung inhales. The other way to look at it is the full lung inhale is a sympathetic activation, whereas an exhale is more parasympathetic, which means more rest and digest tone than the fight or flight tone. That's another way to think about this. Can the Wim Hof method cause shingles or tinnitus? Yes. In some cases, yes. Again, this goes back to the very beginning. Can cold showers cause anxiety? The Wim Hof method, when you're in ice water, the first thing that triggers is your sympathetic, your fight or flight responses, and it's your goal to get those responses under control. You're balancing sympathetic versus parasympathetic. Sometimes, if you're not able to do that because you're either doing the method a little bit wrong or your physiology is just not attuned to it just now, not your fault at all, you can get in a sympathetic state, which means you get sort of increased levels of anxiety in a feedback loop. And when that happens, that can also trigger autoimmune problems, such as tinnitus. That's like your sympathetic nervous system going a little crazy and messing with your ear canals. And I did a whole video, does the Wim Hof method cause tinnitus? That you should check out about that. Sometimes what happens, you already have tinnitus, but you don't notice it, and the Wim Hof method makes you more aware of your tinnitus. So the Wim Hof method doesn't actually cause the problem, but just makes you aware of the problem. That can happen. But with shingles, I have seen this around in the universe. Shingles is the chickenpox virus that we all mostly had when we were kids. And then when you get it again, because your sympathetic nervous system is a little overactive as you get older, it's connected to anxiety. Yes, it can trigger. What I would suggest in these instances is refrain from the Wim Hof method and instead practice downstate regulation exercises such as Buteyko breathing or box breathing, things that slow you down and bring you into a more meditative focus. That should help. Also, you can talk to your doctor. There's also a shingles vaccine out there, which I believe you should get. Why not? All right, well, those are my answers to the most common questions on the Are Becoming the Iceman subreddit. If you have questions, drop them down below, and maybe I'll do some shorts or another one of these lightning round explainers. It's been a real pleasure having you here. Go check out those videos that I mentioned. I'll put some links in this area. Oh, I also have a newsletter. Sometimes I say smart things there, so check it out.